Begin. We can. Mhm. Okay, so good evening, everyone. And I'm very happy that I was asked to teach this course. It's one of my favorite topics, and I feel that it's very relevant and very important for everyone to explore this topic of death and dying. And so let's start with just sitting quietly for a few minutes and settling our minds. Some of you may have been working today. You may have been kind of going here, there, rushing around, busy. And so there might be still a lot of thoughts in your mind left over from what you were doing today. So let's sit quietly, make yourself comfortable. Sit in a comfortable position, but if you can, keep your back straight because that helps the mind to be more awake and alert and focused. But other than your back being straight, let the rest of your body be as relaxed as possible. So try to let go of any tension there may be anywhere in your body, like sometimes in our shoulders or back, and maybe tightness, tension. So do your best to let it go. You can imagine it melting and flowing out of you and sinking into the earth below. So let your body be as relaxed as possible, and also relax your mind. So that means putting aside or letting go of any thoughts that might be running around in your mind, left over from what you were doing today or any time in the past, or thoughts about the future, what you're going to do tonight, tomorrow, and so on. So put all those thoughts aside for now and just give yourself a break from the usual busyness of the mind. And then just let yourself be right here in the present moment and the present place, wherever you are. And tuning into the body is a good way of settling the mind in the present. You just become aware of your body, in whatever position you're sitting in. And become aware of your breath flowing in and out without interfering with the breath. So don't try to control or manipulate your breathing. Just allow your body to breathe as it does naturally. And with your mind, your awareness, follow the breath. Be aware of the breath. Be aware of sensations in your body as the breath is coming in and as it's going out. And try to keep your awareness on the breath, one breath after another. And come back to the breath anytime the mind wanders away to something else. Now let's think about why we're here. What's our reason or motivation for being here, being part of this course? So, the best motivation we can have for anything we do is altruism, caring about others, understanding that they want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And yet, many people do suffer, and not everyone has as much happiness as they want and need. But we all naturally feel concern for others. We are moved by compassion when we see someone suffering, and moved by joy when we see somebody happy. So Buddhism says we can use our lives to benefit others, to bring them more happiness and help them have less suffering. There's ways we can work on ourselves, our mind, our ability to relate to others so that we can accomplish this. We can bring greater peace and happiness to others and to the world and help to reduce the suffering, the problems of the world. So if that sounds like something you'd like to do, then I think that you're here to learn ways to bring that about, make your life more meaningful and beneficial, not just for yourself, but also for others. And before you open your eyes, imagine the Buddha in front of you, made of light. This whole image, peaceful, smiling, compassionate. You think that the Buddha has nothing but pure, unconditional love and compassion for you and for everyone else. And he's also incredibly wise. He understands the true nature of things. So his mind is free of all mistakes, confusion, ignorance, delusion. And he's totally dedicated to helping every single being also become free of suffering and its causes and achieve this state of enlightenment that he himself attained. So imagine opening your heart to the Buddha, to his wisdom, compassion, his guidance. And imagine light flowing from the Buddha into you, into your heart, and filling you completely, your body, your mind. Imagine yourself being filled with this pure, bright, blissful light flowing from the Buddha. The light represents all his excellent qualities and realizations. So as it fills you, imagine any negative energy that you have is purified, cleared away, and the light nourishes your positive potential, your good qualities, your ability to develop love and compassion and wisdom in yourself. So we'll recite the mantra of the Buddha 3 times. It'll be on the screen for those who don't know it. And while reciting the mantra, continue doing this visualization. Really feel like you're being filled with the light of the Buddha. Ayata Om Mane Mane Maha Mane Soha. Ayata Om Mane Maha Soha. Ayata Om Mane Guys, Lama Yeshe would often recite the Buddhist mantra at the beginning of teachings, and it was just very beautiful, very powerful with his very beautiful voice. So I like doing that as well. Okay, so in this this course, the title of the course is Peaceful Living and Peaceful Dying. And I first started teaching this course, I think around 1990, 1991, when I was living in Singapore. And I became aware that many people were afraid of death and didn't even want to think about it or talk about it or hear about it. And I thought, oh, this is not good. It's very important to, make ourselves aware of the fact that we're going to die and get ready for it, prepare ourselves for it. And so the course was very popular. Many people came, and one man said he was so thankful for the course because he said, this is something we really need to look at and talk about, but nobody wants to talk about it. So I think that's less true now than it was in the past, because there's the hospice movement. There's a lot more openness about the topic of death than there was in the past. But still, there's many people who really want to avoid the subject. And it's almost like death is a dirty word. Yeah, if you mention death in a group of people, it's like, don't talk about that. So sometimes it is hard to find people, to find situations where you can discuss this topic of death and dying. And in Buddhism, the Buddha very much emphasized looking at this topic and contemplating it, meditating on it, being mindful of it, because it's something we're going to face one day. There's no way we can avoid death. It's an inevitable part of our own life. We're gonna die one day, and even before that, people we know will die. I'm sure all of us have already had that experience of family members, friends, neighbors, people we work with who have died. And if it's people we care about, I think we naturally want to help. We want to help them at that difficult time. But if we ourselves are scared of death and don't want to have anything to do with it, then that will inhibit our ability to be with others, accompany others, and help them through that difficult time. And so, yeah, both in preparation for our own death and also to be able to help other people who are dying, then it is important for us to look at this topic and learn to manage whatever difficult emotions we may have about it, and then prepare ourselves for it. So that's the real point of this course, is to prepare ourselves for death when it happens, either to people we know and care about or to ourselves. And some people probably think that if they do think about death and talk about death, it will take away the quality of their life. It will spoil things. Yeah, they can't be happy if they think about death. But actually, the opposite is true. If we really open ourselves to the reality, the truth of death, and learn to be comfortable with it, to accept it, and work on preparing ourselves for it, it actually improves the quality of our life. Yeah, our life, our relationships will go better with this awareness. So I hope to make that clear to you in this course. So the first slide, I've got some slides to share. So the first slide just mentions the main points. No, that's the last slide. So would you go to the first one? Sorry, the first slide. Well, actually, that's just the title page. Next one. Yeah, second one. Okay, course outline. So these are the main points, the main topics we will be looking at. First is Buddhist perspectives on death and dying, because I don't know all of you what kind of background you have. Some of you may be new to Buddhism and not familiar with the Buddhist ideas about death and dying, so I thought to share those. And then we'll look at the truth of impermanence, that this is a fact of life, impermanence, the changing nature of things. And then how to meditate on death, and then how to prepare ourselves for death. What are things we can do so we're more ready for death when it happens? And then how to help others who are dying. So we're not going to do all of these tonight. I think tonight we'll cover the first 2 points, and then the other points we'll look at in subsequent weeks. Okay, so the next slide, this is the Buddhist perspectives on death and dying. And so as I go through these and talk about these, I invite you to check them against your own ideas, your own thoughts and feelings about these points, you know, just to check, how do I think about this? Because the Buddha, when he was teaching, always encouraged his followers to check things for themselves. He said, don't just believe what I'm saying, but investigate it for yourself. And if you find that it's true and it's good and it's helpful, then you can accept it, you can take it on. You know, so we're always invited to do that. Okay, so the first point is that human life is fortunate and precious. So in our tradition, the Tibetan tradition, the Gelugpa tradition in particular, we have a series of teachings we call the Lamrim. Lamrim means the stages of the path to enlightenment. And so there are various texts, teachings that show the step-by-step process for getting from where we are now as an unenlightened being all the way up to enlightenment, because we do have that ability, that potential to become enlightened, just like the Buddha did. And so the Lamrim, some of you are probably familiar with it, but those who are not, it consists of a series of topics that we learn about. We get teachings from our teachers, we read about them, and we meditate on them, we contemplate them. That's the real purpose, is to contemplate these topics, to bring them deeper into our mind and bring about a transformation of our mind in our life. So one of the first topics in the Lamrim is called the precious human life. And basically what this is about is that if we have a human life with certain conditions, like, you know, enough resources, food, house, and so on, you know, the basic necessities of life, and we have a healthy body, healthy mind, and we have the opportunity to meet teachers that show us the Dharma, the teachings of the path to enlightenment. And we have an interest Yeah, we don't just say, oh, this is a lot of rubbish, but the teachings spark interest in us, and we want to learn more and go deeper. So if we have those kind of conditions, then this is a very precious life, a very precious situation, because with this life, we can at least start to develop our potential for enlightenment. The Buddha said that we all have the ability, the potential to become enlightened, to become completely free of all suffering and the causes of suffering, and to develop all the good qualities, all the positive qualities, so that we're always happy and peaceful and full of good energy. So we can do just what the Buddha did, achieve what the Buddha achieved, the state of enlightenment. And but it does take effort. We have to work at it. It's not just going to happen because we want it to happen. But having a human life with these conditions is the best opportunity, the best situation to be able to develop this potential that we have. And even for those who aren't necessarily interested in attaining enlightenment, having a human life with a healthy body, healthy mind, and the things that we need and so on, gives us a situation in which we can make our life meaningful and beneficial. We can do a lot of good to help others, to help the world. And there's so many good things we can do with this life. And so I'm just summarizing this topic, but basically when we learn about and we reflect on this topic of the precious human life, it gives us a lot of joy, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm to use our life in ways that are beneficial. Like, yeah, oh, I can do all these good things, and I do want to do these good things. I want to make my life meaningful and beneficial and helpful for others in the world and so on. And then the next topic, right after the precious human life, is the topic of death and impermanence. And that is to bring us down to earth and realize that, yes, we have this great life, this great opportunity, great situation, lots of things we can do to benefit others, to benefit ourselves, but it's not going to last forever. It's like very impermanent, very transitory. It's going to end at some point, and we don't know when it's going to end. It could end any day. And so if there are things we want to do with this life, yeah, good things we want to do, we shouldn't be lazy and procrastinate. We should start now, like right away, start doing those things and not think, oh, I can do them later. I don't have to do them now, because we don't know if there will be a later. I think the reason I'm talking about this is because in the context of the Buddhist teachings, and in particular the Lam Rim, the topic of death and impermanence comes after we have already looked at this wonderful life that we had and come to realize, yeah, I'm really fortunate with the life, the opportunities, the conditions that I have. And so contemplating death and impermanence is to balance things, to make us realize that we have just a limited amount of time to do the things that we want to do. And so let's get started doing that. Now, on the other hand, if there's a person who hadn't heard about the preciousness of human life, and maybe this person has a very pessimistic point of view and thinks, oh, life is meaningless, life is worthless, life is hopeless, or I am hopeless. Yeah, many people think that way. I am a hopeless person. I'm a failure. I'm lousy. And, very negative view of themselves and of their lives. And maybe they have depression, despair, and so on. So if a person is in that state of mind, and then you start talking to them about death and impermanence, it might just make them feel worse. Right? It may not be beneficial for them at all. And so I thought it's important to know that from the Buddhist point of view, we think about death and impermanence within the context of a sense of value and meaning and preciousness to our life, and the importance of using our life wisely and skillfully. Yeah. Okay, so point number 2 is that death is a natural, inevitable part of life. Okay, so that might seem obvious to some of you. However, not everyone in the world thinks that way. I've heard of some people, and I think this might be in certain spiritual traditions or maybe New Age ways of thinking, that death is regarded as a failure. Yeah, like if someone gets cancer and they're not able to recover from their cancer, and they're on the way to the end of their life, then some people's view is that, oh, you must have done something wrong. You are a failure. I mean, they may not say that, of course, but this is the attitude that they may have. And also people may think that way about themselves. Yeah. They may think that, oh, what did I do wrong? I'm a loser, I'm a failure, or I'm being punished. Yeah. That I did wrong things, bad things, and this is a punishment that I'm dying. And so if you have those kind of notions, then it just makes things worse. I mean, it's difficult enough to have an illness, a terminal illness, difficult enough to be approaching death. But if on top of that, you have this notion that, oh, what did I do wrong? There's something wrong with me. I'm a failure, I'm a loser. It's just going to increase your suffering. And this is not at all the Buddhist view. The Buddhist view is no, we all have to die. Death is something that happens to everybody, even the great saints, the holy people, the holy beings like the Buddha, like Jesus. Yeah, in the world, in history, we've had these wonderful people who've done wonderful things, really good-hearted and compassionate and kind and pure, unselfish, dedicating themselves to helping others. So those people died too. You can't say they did something wrong and they're being punished and they're a failure. Okay, so it's just something that happens to everyone. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later. I'll show you some quotations from the Buddha to illustrate this. But yeah, it's just a natural part of life, just like the sun rises and sets every day. And right now in the northern hemisphere, it's springtime, so we have all these beautiful leaves on the trees and grass and flowers growing, and everything is really beautiful and fresh. But inevitably after a few months, it's going to become dry, brown, yellow, dead, and then winter will come where there's no flowers, no leaves, and so on. It's just the natural course of things, that things arise, come into existence, are born, are young and fresh, but inevitably they get old and wither and die. So it's just something natural rather than a punishment or a failure. And then number 3 is it's important to accept and to be mindful of death. And the reason for this is it gives us a sense of what is really important in life. It helps us to recognize what is important and what isn't important, so that we can focus on what is important and leave aside what isn't important, since we don't have forever. We have a limited amount of time. So an example of this is being kind and caring and loving to other people. Yeah, and that's an important aspect of life. And there are people who have near-death experiences. I love reading these stories of people who they have they may have been in an accident, or they have a heart attack, or something happened, and for a period of time it seemed as if they were dead. like, they weren't breathing, their heart stopped, brain stopped for a period of time. And then they were revived, they came back to consciousness. And many of such people had experiences during that period of time when they were seemingly dead, not really dead, but almost dead. And yeah, so they have experiences like going out of their bodies, going to beautiful places, and meeting with beings from other realms and gaining insights and so on and so forth. And so people, apparently this is very common. Many, many people have this type of experience. And a common outcome of those experiences is that people realize what is important in life. It's like they went close to death and then they came back and had a second chance of life. Many of these people come back with this sense that what is important in life is to love others, to be loving and caring to others, rather than being selfish and just pursuing your own goals, wanting to be rich and famous and successful and so on, just for yourself. So they realize, oh, that's not important. Those things aren't important. What is important is caring about others, and showing my love for others. And this is the message that we hear from the great spiritual teachers like Buddha, like Jesus, and so on. They emphasize the importance of love and compassion to others. So we don't have to go through a near-death experience in order to get that insight. Yeah, we can learn it from others, and also just from our own reflections about what is important. But this is one of the benefits of thinking about death and accepting that we're going to die and living within that awareness that we are going to die. It helps us focus on what is important and leave aside what isn't important. And also another reason why it's important to accept and be mindful of death is that in Buddhism, and I think the same is true in other religions and spiritual traditions, the time of death is important. The state of mind that we have at the time of death is very, very important. And from the Buddhist point of view, the reason it's important is because death is like a gateway to another life. We're going to have another life after this one. We don't just go out of existence, but our mind, our consciousness leaves this body and then goes to another one. And there's various possibilities of where we go and what happens to us, what we experience. Some of these are good and nice experiences, but there's also bad ones, bad experiences. So we definitely want to avoid those. And so the state of mind that we have at the time of death is one of the main factors that will affect where we go after we die, where our mind goes and what kind of rebirth we find ourselves in. So it's really important to be able to die with a state of mind that is positive, have some kind of positive thoughts like compassion, love, faith in the Buddha, or taking refuge in the Buddha or whoever your spiritual guide is. So something positive in your mind rather than something negative like being angry. Some people die angry at the world, angry at their doctors for not giving them the right treatment, angry at their relatives for whatever reason. I don't know. That would be really bad to die with anger, in an angry state of mind, or with anxiety, fear, or with attachment, like clinging to people, your things, your body, not wanting to leave, not wanting to let go. So those are states of mind that are not positive, not helpful. And we want to, avoid having those kinds of attitudes as we are dying. And so to be able to have a positive state of mind at the time of death, we have to learn how to do it now while we're alive. We have to learn how to manage our mind and keep it positive as much as possible, and not let our mind be overwhelmed by negative attitudes like anger and attachment. And that's not easy to do, but it is possible. But awareness of death and the importance of having a positive state of mind at the time of death will give us the energy to practice and work on this, preparing ourselves for death so that we can have some kind of positive state of mind at that time. And then number 4, death isn't necessarily a bad experience. So, people who are afraid of death or afraid of dying might think this way. Yeah, they might think, oh, it's just going to be horrible. It's going to be painful. It's going to be just, really awful experience. And in some cases, yes, for some people, death is a bad experience. It is horrible. There's physical pain, there's mental, emotional pain. However, it's not necessarily like that. There are cases of people who pass away peacefully, even in a positive state of mind. I can say that from my own experience because I was with my mother when she died a number of years ago. And she was very peaceful and positive, not angry, not clinging, attached, not frightened. Yeah. And I could see that it was because of the way she lived her life and her religious beliefs that gave her a lot of strength and comfort at that time. And there's also a story about one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's disciples, Inta McKim, who was the director of the center in Brisbane, Australia. And she passed away some years ago. She had cancer. And before she died, she spent her last months in doing a lot of practice and, practice meditation and so on. And at one point she wrote a letter to Lama Zopa Rinpoche saying something like, "This is the happiest time of my life." And something like that. And so because she was focusing, she had accepted death. She had accepted the fact that she was going to die, and she was preparing herself for it by doing all these practices. And these practices were giving her a lot of joy, a lot of good energy. And so she was also very peaceful when she passed away. Another example is Maury Schwartz. You may have heard or read the book called Tuesdays with Maury. They also made a film about it with, I think, Jack Lemmon was playing Maury Schwartz. So this is a true story. This man who was, died of ALS, and but as he was approaching death and going through the process of death, he was very peaceful and very loving and compassionate. He was giving out all this positive energy to the people around him. I mean, he had difficult moments, yes, but I think he was using meditation. He was doing mindfulness meditation, and that really helped him deal with what he was going through. But anyway, there are cases of people who have not bad experiences as they die, even be peaceful. It all depends on how we live our life, how we prepare ourselves for death. And so again, it shows the importance of getting ready, not leaving it to the last moment and then thinking that we'll figure out what to do, how to die well. That's very risky. And chances are you won't know what to do. But if we prepare ourselves beforehand, starting now, and I'll talk about how to do that later. But there are things we can do to prepare ourselves for death so that we can, ensure our mind is peaceful and positive at that time. And then number 5 is that death is not a complete end, but a gateway to another life. So I know there are many people in the world today who believe that our mind, our consciousness is just a product of the brain. And once the brain dies, once the brain is no longer functioning, then there's no more mind, no more consciousness. So Yeah, that's it. When a person dies, that's it. There's nothing left, nothing remaining. Buddhism says otherwise, and many, I think all other religions and spiritual traditions say otherwise, that there is some kind of continuation. In Buddhism, what continues is our mind, our consciousness, which is a stream made up of all our thoughts, feelings, emotions, our experiences, all our conscious experiences. This is like a stream that continues all through our life, and it will continue after the body dies. So death in Buddhism is the separation of our body and our mind, consciousness. So while we're alive, our body and our mind have an interdependent connection, interdependent relationships. So, they work together, affect each other. But the time of death is when there's a separation. Mind and consciousness separates from the physical body, and the body is left behind as a corpse to be buried or cremated or whatever. And the mind, which is not a physical thing. So this is part of the problem. We can't see the mind. It's not visible to our eyes or to any scientific instruments. It's not tangible. It has no physical properties at all. And so, of course, nobody can see the mind leaving the body, separating from the body. But it happens. And then the mind, our consciousness will take another life, another rebirth. If we haven't yet attained enlightenment or nirvana in this life, then we're up for another rebirth. And that depends on various factors like our karma, state of mind we have at the time of death, and so on. So I know this is a controversial subject. Not everyone is able to believe, to accept the continuation of consciousness after death and taking another life, another rebirth. But this is definitely something the Buddha taught. You can't say that it was added by other people to the Buddhist teachings and he didn't really believe it. That's not true. It's there in the Buddhist teachings again and again and again. We talk about rebirth and the different places of rebirth, different realms where rebirth can take place. That's an integral part of the Buddhist teachings. Anyway, whether you can believe it or not, that's there. And try to at least keep an open mind. Try not to have an attitude that says, oh no, I can't believe that. That's impossible. That's rubbish. Try not to just reject it like that, but keep your mind open and think, maybe it's true, maybe it's possible. And there's actually a lot of material that you can look into that can help you, such as near-death experiences. Because in these cases, the person's body, their physical body, has stopped functioning, including their brain. Yeah, the brain is not functioning. It's like dead. And yet, after they are revived, after they come back to consciousness, they talk about experiences that they had during that time when they were supposedly dead and their brain wasn't functioning. So, yeah, brain scientists have a hard time explaining how that is possible, that there can be conscious experiences while the brain is not functioning. And then there's also cases of people who remember past lives. And in some of these cases, they are able to give information about these past lives that can be verified. This is usually children, young children, because they're closer in time to the past life. And so sometimes at the age of 2 or 3 or 4, a little child will start talking about another life. And then they say, I'm not James, I am Howard or something, my name isn't Sally, it's Anne. And then they can talk about this other life, this other person that they were. And yeah, sometimes the information that they give turns out to be true, verifiable. And the parents didn't know anything about this, so it wasn't that they fed that information to the kid. They didn't see it on TV. So there's no other way they could have acquired that information that they talk about. So then it becomes, like, how do you explain that? So looking into those cases of near-death experiences and also past life memories, I'm not saying all of them are genuine. There might be some who are just inventing stories. It's possible, but some are difficult to explain otherwise. Anyway, so those are things you can look into to help open your mind to the idea of rebirth. I didn't have too much difficulty myself when I first heard about rebirth, reincarnation, but I did have some doubt. But what helped me was reading a book called 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation by Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia. He passed away a number of years ago, but he spent the better part of his life and his career investigating cases suggestive of reincarnation. So he wasn't trying to say this is proof for reincarnation, but it suggests reincarnation. So he traveled all over the world and he collected thousands of these cases. And he did it in a kind of scientific way, like a detective, just getting the facts, talking to the person who remembers their past life, talking to other family members, neighbors, anyone else who may have heard the person talking about that, and then investigating, the circumstances that the person described. Was there really such a case like that, and such a person, and so on and so forth. So he just presents all this material and leaves it up to the reader to decide what to make of it. And so reading that book was really helpful for me because I just couldn't see any other explanation for these cases, than rebirth or reincarnation. So there's one text that I really like called the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva. And one of the verses in that text talks about how our body is like a guest house and our mind is like a guest, something like that. And so I really like that idea that our mind is like a traveler moving from one life to another over time. And for a while, the mind abides in a particular body, like, this lifetime, my mind is living in this body. But at the time of death, the end of this life, my mind will leave this body and then move on to another body, to another life. Maybe a completely different kind of person, language, personality, situation, and so on. And so that way of seeing life, as it's just like a stay in a hotel, staying in a hotel. You're a traveler and you're staying in a hotel for a while. Then you don't get too attached, right? When we're traveling and we're staying in a hotel just for a few nights or even for a few weeks, we know we're going to move on. We know we're not going to be there forever. So we don't get attached to that place, and we don't get all fussy about, the color of the curtains and the carpet on the floor and the light fixtures, because we know this isn't permanent. I'm not going to be here forever. So we let it be. So that can help us to have a different view of our body and our life, and not have so much attachment and identification. This is me, as if this is who I am forever and ever and ever. this is my family, this is my friend, this is my house, seeing everything in a very permanent, fixed, concrete way. And so, yeah, it can help us to release a lot of our attachments. And then again, going back to the notion of the preciousness of the human life, we want to value the life that we have, the body that we have, the circumstances that we have, and use them well. The best way we can use them is to benefit others and also to benefit ourselves, to develop our spiritual potential. And so we do value the life, the body, circumstances that we have, and make good use of them. But at the same time, we know it's not going to last forever. We're going to have to leave it all behind at one point, so we don't have strong grasping at it. So yeah, this is part of the Buddhist view, that this life is just one life in a series of lives. We've had other lives before this one, we will have other lives after this one, so this is just one segment of a long series of lifetimes, and it just gives you a different perspective about life that enables you to take things more easily rather than so tightly, rigidly. And then again, the importance of using our life to benefit others, but also to benefit ourselves, and make sure that we're creating the causes for the next life and other subsequent lives to be fortunate ones, to be good ones, and not send ourselves to some horrible situation. Okay, then number 6 is that we can become free of death and rebirth. So this is the ultimate goal in Buddhism, freeing ourselves from this whole situation where we have to die and then take rebirth again and again and again. So the Buddha was once an ordinary person like us. He was in this situation, going through death and rebirth and suffering and problems and confusion. But he found a way out. He found a way to become free, and then taught the way so that others could follow. So there is a way to become free of this situation of unenlightened existence that we are in, where we do have to die and then be reborn again and again and again. It's not a nice situation. It's not fun. It's a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, a lot of suffering. But it isn't forever. It isn't, a situation that we have to remain in forever and ever and ever. There is a way out. There is an escape route. Buddha showed the way, and we can use our life to at least start walking on that path. Start making that journey to freedom. And in fact, this being mindful of death, impermanence in death, is one of the main factors that gives us energy. It energizes us to walk the path, to follow the path, to become free. Okay, are there any questions so far? Anything that I mentioned that you don't understand and want to know more about? You can ask questions now before we continue. Zoe, I can't actually see you, but Zoe, you want to ask a question? You can unmute yourself and ask. Zoe, are you there?
Zoe is muted.
Yeah.
Isn't she?
I can't.
Maybe we can go on to Barry Denning.
Sorry? Yeah, okay, well, try to keep trying to unmute and we can ask Barry Denny. You want to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. I so I like the idea of an death not being the end. I don't not believe it. I don't believe it, neither. But is there a value? I don't know. I will get the Ian Stevenson book, and hopefully I'll really believe it. But is there a value in pretending and acting as if I believe it? It's like I want to believe it.
I think there's nothing to lose. If you believe, I mean, I'm just expressing my thoughts, but yeah, I've heard other teachers express this as well. If you think that there could be another rebirth after this, even if you're not 100% sure of it, it will help you to live your life in a way that you feel good about. Yeah, you'll do good things, you'll try to avoid bad things. And so then whether there's another life after this or not, by the end of your life, you will have done a lot of good things and you'll be able to look back at your life and think, yeah, I'm glad that I did those things. I feel good about the way I lived my life. Whereas if, people who think that, death is the end and there's nothing after that, they might become quite careless and think they can do anything. They can get away with murder. As long as the cops don't get you, then you can do anything. And so they may think, yeah, I don't have to pay for anything that I do. There won't be any consequences to the things that I do. So then they can become quite careless. Of course, that doesn't happen to everybody, but it can happen. But knowing that we will continue after this, or thinking we might continue after this, will give us a sense of wanting to do the right things, wanting to be a good person, wanting to develop our kindness and our compassion, our good qualities, help others, and so on. And so then the quality of your life will be better. You've got nothing to lose. That's something to think about.
Thank you.
Okay, Zoe, did you manage to unmute?
Venerable, there's a problem. She can't unmute. We tried to unmute her, but she has a question, and her question in the chat is, can you describe the form or presence that consciousness has after death?
Well, it doesn't have a form because consciousness is formless. It has no physical properties. Okay. And presence. Well, I mean, there are people who have the ability, who have developed their mind, and they have the ability to be aware of the minds of others. They can perceive the minds of others. I don't have that ability, so I am not able to speak firsthand what that looks like. But yeah, according to Buddhism, the mind, the consciousness is non-physical, completely non-physical. Although in Tibetan Buddhism and some other traditions of Buddhism as well, they say that they talk about a bardo period. So when our mind, our consciousness separates from this body, it takes a bardo body, and the bardo body is it is form, but a very subtle type of form that most people are unable to see, and it's able to pass through walls and go to a place as soon as it thinks of it. So like if you're in New York City, as soon as you think of Los Angeles, you're there. Just like that. You don't have to take an airplane. And so the bardo body has that ability to instantly go to a place that it thinks of. And so after death, the mind is in this bardo form. And it's looking for another life. It's, you know, going around looking for another place to be reborn. So there's a whole explanation about the bardo and how long it lasts and so on. I wasn't planning to get into that tonight. We'll see if we have time later in the course to look at that. But the bardo body is a body, is a subtle form body, and the mind is conjoined with that, or you know, abiding in that kind of body. Okay. So that's what happens to a mind or consciousness after death. Okay, then somebody else. Oh, Jennifer and Tony, you have your hand up. You want to ask a question?
So it's good to see you. I just actually spent 9 days at the Abbey, but you were traveling at the time, so I went to the Memorial Day retreat.
Oh,
And
just
so it's
weeks ago.
yeah, so just a couple weeks ago, and part of the reason I stayed a few days before and after the retreat, because my mother just recently passed away April 4th, and now it's living in a world without my mom and my dad and facing those fears. Like you said, death was a dirty word, hospice, like all those terms. And I was able to, I did an emergency move from the West Coast to the East Coast. And when Tony and I arrived in Virginia from Spokane, Washington, we had 1 week to spend with her at the hospital. And so a lot of what you were talking about was just kind of reminding me of that week that I got to spend with her and going through all those different stages and being able to face death in our own time. And so I guess when I was at the Abbey and meditating and doing my reflections and trying to figure out, okay, what's next, and all these talks about good karma and all this kind of thing. So from what you were saying tonight, one thing that's a little confusing for me is, on the one hand, we're like, oh, well, death's not the end because it's the gateway to a new life. So then I'm like, yay, there's hope. But then like in the next breath, and life is suffering and it's not very fun to be reborn and we want to end that cycle. That I was like, oh, but I thought I was going to have hope, but now I'm not, you know? So kind of like that, like, well, how do I wrap my head around that part of, yes, it's a gateway to a new life and we probably don't want to keep going through that cycle. And then the second thing, while I was meditating at the Abbey, I felt I was able to communicate with my mom, and like in our traditions of Native American, and kind of like, I didn't really know how to think about talking to our ancestors, and a lot of kind of how I think is communicating with ancestors or those kinds of things. And I don't know if the Buddhist text talks about this, but then I'm like, well, if they got reborn into another life, can I still talk to them? Like, hey, mom, you still there? Did you like go on to be a squirrel or, you know, whatever? And I don't know if like our vibrations and parts of us still exist where we can communicate with them. So those were just some of my thoughts from what you were sharing tonight.
Wow, that's a lot. So is there a question there you want me to respond to, or you were just sharing?
So I guess the question that I was trying to form from what you just said was, if death is a gateway to a new transformation pathway, how do I think about that? Like, kind of, I feel like there's hope, like, oh, we have a longer arc to deal with in terms of like doing good on earth and all that good stuff. Because at the same breath, then the next sentence is basically, we need to end this cycle and life is suffering. So I feel like there's two messages going on, and I'm not really sure how to think about those two messages at the same time.
Well, yeah, I mean, ideally, you study the whole of Buddhism and get an understanding of the whole Buddhist teaching, which is not, you know, not something you can just convey in 5 minutes or even 2 hours, or, you know, it takes time to understand the Buddhist perspective. But yeah, I mean, the very first teaching the Buddha gave was the Four Noble Truths, where he first is suffering, meaning there's a lot of unpleasant experiences in life, a lot of unsatisfactory experiences in life. And that's, we can't deny that. Nobody is able to go through life and never have any problems. So it's just an inevitable aspect of life. And then he went on to explain the causes. Where do these problems come from? Why do we have these problems? Well, it's basically because of factors in ourselves. There's ignorance about the true nature of things. There's other disturbing emotions like anger, aversion, attachment, jealousy. So there's factors within our mind that bring about the problems that we experience. That's the second noble truth. And the third noble truth is cessation, meaning it's possible to be free of all suffering, all problems, and the very causes of suffering, so they don't keep producing more and more suffering. So there's a state of complete peace, freedom from all suffering and problems and its causes, and you can stay in that forever. And then the path, the fourth truth is the path, what you need to do to get there. And so the Buddha explained, the Eightfold Path, and basically it's living ethically, developing concentration, and developing wisdom. That's what we need to do in order to achieve that state of peace. So that's the ultimate goal in Buddhism, is a state of peace, freedom from suffering, freedom from having to die and be reborn, because it's not great having to die and go through death again and again and take birth again and again. It's not a great situation. Even if we're born in a good, in a good rebirth, a good place, it's still, the whole process of change is difficulty. So that's the ultimate, the ultimate goal is to get out completely from this whole situation of having to die and be reborn and experience suffering. But in the meantime, that takes time. It's not something we can do right away. And most people probably take numerous lifetimes. So in the meantime, we just try to make the best of whatever situation we are in. We try to make sure that we have all the conditions we need to continue following the path. So we want to be born in a good situation as a human being with a healthy body and a healthy mind, and the ability to continue practicing, following the path. So we don't really look forward to another life as, oh, whoopee, I get another life, another chance to enjoy myself. Not like that, but rather I want another life in which I can continue to follow the path and work towards enlightenment. So that's, in a nutshell, how Buddhism views that, what seems to be maybe a contradiction or something confusing. The reason I mentioned that death is not an end, but like a gateway to another life, is because the view that death is the end of everything is so prevalent. So many people believe that. They think, oh, like many scientists say, well, once your brain dies, there's nothing left. You don't have any more experiences. So you're gone, you're finished. So many people believe that. And so I'm just pointing out that that's not the case according to Buddhism, and it's our mind, our consciousness that continues and takes another life. So hopefully some of these things will become more clear as we go along. So I did want to go on, if you don't mind, and talk about impermanence, and then we'll do a little bit of meditation on impermanence. So if we could go back to the slides. We should be up to slide number 4 now. Fourth one. We did that one. Next one. Okay, so this is one of the quotes from the Buddha where he spoke about impermanence. So impermanence means change. It means things are going through changes. They don't stay the same. And so this is the case for ourselves and our bodies, our minds, and all the things in the world around us. They are all impermanent. meaning that they don't remain the same, even from one moment to the next. They're constantly changing. And there's two aspects of impermanence. One is called coarse or gross impermanence. And that is when something changes in a way that we can easily see. For example, when a person dies, or a house burns down, or a glass is dropped on the floor and it shatters into pieces. So it's like perceptible, obvious change. Something was once there and then it goes out of existence. And then there's subtle impermanence. And subtle impermanence means that things are changing every single moment, every nanosecond, the shortest moment of time. Nothing stays the same, even from one tiny moment to the next. And we can think about science and how things, like physical things, like our bodies are made of cells, molecules, atoms, and then even smaller particles that aren't frozen and fixed and solid, but are constantly changing every moment. And it's because of this constant changing that's happening every single moment that things age, like our bodies, for example. They get older and show signs of age, wrinkles and age spots and so on. And our eyesight decreases, our hearing decreases, our cognitive abilities decrease. And then eventually at some point, this body can no longer remain alive, no longer sustain life. And so these obvious changes, these big changes that we can see, happen because of the subtle changes that are happening every single moment. But that subtle impermanence isn't something easy to see. We can't see it. We can see the gross impermanence. But anyway, starting with impermanence is a helpful approach to death. For many people, death is really scary to think about and talk about. But impermanence might be a little easier because it's happening all around us. Like I was saying with nature, right now it's springtime, so things are growing, but then we know at the end of summer, and then it will be fall, and all those growing things will die, and leaves will fall off the trees and so on. So we have evidence of impermanence around us all the time in our world, in our daily life. So it's kind of easier to accept. So anyway, this is one of the quotes from the Buddha that they use in our tradition that shows how, it's just an inevitable aspect of life. What is born will die. Yeah. So any being, human or animal or whatever, that is born, inevitably at some point it will die. It's impossible for a being to be born and then just live forever and not have to die. That's simply, an impossibility. And then what has been gathered will be dispersed. So, for example, a group of people gather to have a party or a concert or a conference, and they stay together for a few hours or a few days, but eventually they all, go back to their own places, so that gathering ceases. What has been accumulated will be exhausted. So like during our life, we accumulate a lot of things, money and possessions and so on and so forth. But eventually those things will either run out or go to other places and to other people. We can never stay together forever. What has been built up will collapse. So human beings build buildings and bridges and houses and so on, but they too don't remain forever. Even buildings that have been around for thousands of years. I don't know if there is such a thing, but we can see certain buildings that were built many centuries ago and they're now in ruins. You can just see the um, the stones that used to be part of them. But yeah, things that are built will eventually collapse. And what has been high will be brought low. So we can think about people who sometimes reach a high point in their career, for example, or if they're an athlete or a singer, you know, they may reach a very high level. They're most popular, the best, winning all these awards and so on. But eventually, that nobody can stay on top forever. So eventually, you know, because of age or other circumstances, somebody else comes along who's better, and then that person moves down in line and goes lower. So these are just some examples of impermanence, and it can be very helpful to contemplate examples of this in our life and in our world. And then the next slide has another quotation from the Buddha that I really like. He says, "This existence of ours is as transient as autumn clouds." I think in the autumn, usually it's windy. And so clouds in the sky don't sit there for long, but they get pushed through the sky, move through the sky quite quickly. To watch the birth and death of beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. This reminds me of a line from Shakespeare. I think it was "As You Like It." I talked about something about all the world is a stage and all the men and women are like actors. Yeah, so people and beings come and go in the world, just like in a drama or a dance. Sorry. And then a lifetime is like a flash of lightning in the sky. And that may seem exaggerated, but if you think about the history of our world, of our planet, and the length of time that human beings have been on our planet, it's just like a tiny fraction of the whole history of the planet. And then one single person, one lifetime, you know, is even a tinier fraction of time compared with the whole lifespan of our planet. So in a relative way, then a lifetime is very, very short and passes very quickly. And then finally he says it's like a torrent down a steep mountain. So time never stops, never stands still. It's continuously going. And as it's passing, minutes, hours, days, months, years, then our lifespan is finishing and we're getting closer to the end of our life. So it is a little bit like being in a rushing river, rushing torrent. So I thought to lead a little meditation. It will have to be very short because we have very little time, but let's do some meditation on impermanence just to get more of a sense of this reality. So make yourselves comfortable. Try to sit with your back straight. And become aware of your body. Focus your awareness on your body. And even if we're sitting very still, not moving, on a subtler level, there is movement taking place all the time in our body. Because our body isn't just one thing, but it's composed of many things, many parts. The skin, blood, bones, organs, tissues, muscles. And those in turn are made of smaller parts like cells. And the cells in our body are not frozen, fixed, static, but they're moving, changing. And even the cells are made of smaller particles, like molecules and atoms, and quarks. And those too are not fixed and frozen, but are moving and changing. So on this very subtle level, microscopic, submicroscopic level, there's constant change, movement taking place in our body. And as our body's changing, it's not getting younger, it's getting older. So this might bring up feelings of sadness, fear, anxiety, but it doesn't help to reject the reality. And if we can just come to accept the reality of change and become more familiar with it, then it becomes more comfortable, no longer averse or frightened by it. And the same is true for the bodies of everyone else. Every single person in the world, their body is also changing every moment, just like ours, getting older. And the same is true for all the other material, physical phenomena, both things made by people like buildings and roads and cars, and all the things in nature, trees, plants, mountains, rivers. So all these physical things, material things in the world around us are also made of parts, particles that are moving and changing, not remaining the same from one moment to the next. So again, we may feel some sadness, sense of dismay about this reality, but there's a positive side of impermanence. Because things are impermanent, and that includes our mind. The mind, our consciousness is also impermanent, changing every moment. And because of impermanent, it's possible to change our mind. We can reduce our disturbing emotions like our anger, fear, jealousy, attachment, and so on. We can reduce those, and we can increase the positive qualities of the mind, like love, compassion, joy, wisdom. If our mind wasn't impermanent, then it would be fixed, stuck the way it is. We would never be able to change it. So see if you can accept that it is possible to work on your mind and bring about changes in your mind and reduce suffering and the causes of suffering, increase happiness and the causes of happiness, and even reach the state that the Buddha achieved, the state of enlightenment. Okay, so we reached the end of our time together, and what we normally do in Buddhist circles is dedicate the positive energy that we create when we do something like meditation or listening to teachings. We create positive energy, good energy, what is called merit. And the best thing we can do with this merit is to share it with others, with the wish that it will bring peace, happiness, wisdom, spiritual growth, spiritual transformation to every other being, and help them all get closer to awakening. Okay, sorry if that was a little rushed. And if you have questions and you didn't have a chance to ask them here, maybe you could email them to the center. Is that reasonable? Yeah, there's an email address they could send them to, and then they can be forwarded to me, and I'll try to answer them next time.
Yes, Venerable. I'll put the email of the center in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for joining, participating, and I hope it was helpful for you. And I hope we all meet again next week.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you very much.
See everybody next week. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
Mm.